Anyone can whistle, that's what they say, easy.
And also a colleague, former student, and I hope a friend of Tom Mitchell. I add hope because that I could be considered to be his friend because I currently have one of the jobs that he held for many, many years. And with that, the idea that the amount of time that Tom has done service in this department and to the art of theater is something that we hope to capture a little bit of tonight with you all. He seems also to have displayed a great deal of patience with me in having sort of followed up behind him, so to speak, because I've made so much of a muddy mess sometimes, and he just patiently redirects me, like right now. I also have the privilege of welcoming all of you here with us tonight. And I really want to say thank you all for coming and making this a joyous occasion to celebrate all things Tom Mitchell. I also need to thank a stalwart group of folks without whom this evening would not have been possible, and that includes Kathy Feely. Where are you, Kathy Feely? Professor Allison Moody. And picking those great tunes for us all night, Genesee Spritko. It really does take a village in order to celebrate Tom Mitchell, so this was our sort of village representation. Why do I get to do this as the associate head? It's not officially my duty, but I've known Tom now for roughly 28 years. And I've learned a few things about Tom during those 28 years. So when the topic of this event came up, of how best to celebrate Tom Mitchell, I pushed and begged and pleaded with everyone on the committee that we do an old Dean Martin-style roast of Tom. I envisioned us cleverly spending the evening insulting Tom with biting one-liners and snarky reflections on his questionable past. And I think I wanted this mostly because I suspected it would be almost impossible to do this with a person who is as genuine, honest, and inherently decent as Tom. Here. I did dedicate an entire afternoon trying to think of one edgy joke about Tom. I was sort of styling myself after John Rickles, a little insult comedy, then it didn't happen, Tom. Seriously, I could not think of anything. How could someone do that to Tom? So I gave up. I set that aside and I thought, somehow, I still need to find a way to celebrate with gratitude this evening and find something of a narration that would guide us through this process. So like I said, I've learned many things about Tom over the years, and one thing I'm always forgetting is that Tom generally dislikes over-sentimentalization. He seems to detest a sort of sugary, sweet reminiscence of better days, or the false nobility of sacrifice, or even the overly romanticized recollection of how things used to be. And he really does sort of hate that. I know this because it's particularly funny because that's what I love most. And every time I worked on a piece of theater, I always looked for a way to sort of focus that sentimentality, and he would often awkwardly come talk to me afterwards with that sort of pained smile of, So, since nobody was paying attention, I decided to try to make this evening as painfully sentimental as I possibly can. Right? So how do we best honor all things Tom? With sentimentality. So hopefully tonight we'll have a lot of reflecting on how sweet our time with you has been, how noble you actually are, and how the wonderful memories of all the times we've had with you shape the people that we have become today. So Tom, tonight we will celebrate the marvelous personhood of you. I guarantee you there will be some sentimentality. I won't cry every single page. You've been part of this department for, wait for it, 39 and a half years. How will you stop at 39.5? Fine, we're not here to judge. In so many ways, you are Illinois theater. And I think it's safe to say that all of us here tonight want to find any and every way we can to honor you and say thank you for the artists and people you have helped us to become. And before I introduce our next speaker, I promised Dean Hamilton, I'm almost there. I wanted to point this out. I want to talk about sentimental. So 25 years ago, Tom hired me to work at the Interlochen Center for the Arts. This is a place that he led as head of the summer programs, sort of swapping off between he and Carrie Bitkin for many years before hiring me. And it turns out he also happened to hire another Champaign local whose name was Anne Marie, who, by whatever magic exists in this world, later agreed to marry me. This would be even more sentimental if she hadn't gotten 2 flat tires and is currently at Walmart trying to get them. The fact that I met my wife at Interlochen, partially because Tom hired me and also had the foresight in some way to hire Anne Marie, sums up for me the sort of quiet, almost prophetic influence that Tom has had on so many of us. I honestly would say I wouldn't have any of the great things that bring me joy in my life without some connection to Tom. My wife, my daughters, 25 years of actual summer employment in the theater. Unheard of, it's phenomenal. And like so many things with knowing Tom, the good just seems to flow if you follow his lead. At this point, JW should sing Matchmaker, Matchmaker. Just kidding. Tom, the good just seems to flow always and forever, and I will always be grateful for that. And I know that there are countless stories in here from those of you who have experienced something just like that. Some type of magical mix that Tom Mitchell puts together that's not supposed to result in the life-influencing thing that happens, and yet there is the magic. So, for taking me on this journey and helping me to experience all of these things, I can think of nothing more fitting from a teacher, mentor, friend than to offer the journey of a lifetime through our sentimental review of you tonight. Now, as I promised, this is the point at which I get to introduce the Dean of the College of Fine and Applied Arts, Dean Kevin Hamilton.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Tom. Hello. It's my privilege to be here tonight on behalf of the college. Serving as the dean means getting to represent a lot of other folks at joyous occasions like this. So just for folks who don't know who I represent today, I'm here representing a lot of other areas on which Tom has had influence. So not just the theater department, but the School of Music, the Department of Dance, over which I'm sure his fingerprints are still very visible from collaborations over the years. As Dean of FAA, I'm also here to represent Cranner Center, where the very culture and the ways of doing things are going to bear the marks of Tom's presence over the years, but also across our whole college and our broader arts community. That includes architecture, landscape architecture, art design, but even more importantly, the alumni. I think as Dean, I want to be here and call to mind the rest of the iceberg way below all of what we're thinking about in terms of your the places where you've worked and all the folks who are out there in the world. 39 years of folks who have worked with Tom and whose very movements reflect his teaching. It's one of the things I love about celebrating events like this one. When someone retires from the performing arts, their influence is actually walking around. They're embodied. People are moving differently for your role with them there, and now they're directing others to move differently. So that there's sort of an amplification in that with your role and direction, Tom. And I love that kind of legacy, the embodied legacies that are out there so visible. And I want to say right off the top, I hope that the next chapter for you just brings return after return of that, Tom, of you meeting ever more people who bear witness to that fruit. The end of the year is when we get to celebrate some of the fruits of our very labored work. We don't get to see enough. We're so much in head down, especially working for the curtain like we do around here. So I'm always glad for chances to celebrate the fruits of labor. And in occasions like this, we really get to celebrate the fruits of that. So I'm very grateful to be doing that. I think and very witness to that as we'll hear more stories. Just one personal anecdote about Tom, what he taught me. One of my very first tasks as an administrator when a former dean, I'm going to ask you later how many deans you've seen. I've seen quite a few. The first dean that gave me an administrative job, one of my first tasks as a dean's fellow was to have a look at workflow over in the performing arts and to try to see what it's like to actually pull off the work over there. And so I showed up at the first rehearsal for 1984. And that was my first introduction to how this stuff actually happened over here. As an artist, I come from painting and drawing. I don't know what it is to make things like you all make. And Tom welcomed me in and introduced me very generously, and I really believe that began my understanding of what I now get to help steward, which is the understanding of the complexities and tremendous amount of labor that goes into the orchestration of these events. Not sure what it means that 1984 was my introduction to administrative art. I'll take that as it comes. But Tom, thank you for your tremendous service to the students in the community. Thank you for your service to the craft. Thank you for your service as a scholar. So much bearing witness to the history of theater and making sure that significant parts of that history are visible and performed and embodied by more people. But we really all wish you the best in this next chapter, and I just hope you keep seeing more and more fruits of your labors over all this time. Congratulations and thank you for all of your labors.
AW thanks the Dean for his meaningful remarks. Thank you so much, Dean Hamilton, for meaningful remarks. I got to work off of the outline. Tom, so it's still trying to embrace sentimentality. This is a good one. One of the best ways to embrace sentimentality that you so naturally distrust is through song. So, in an attempt to have you openly embrace the world of sentiment, one of your former students asked how they might best honor you and the impact you've had on so many of us. So, please welcome Jordan Boftrey, MFA graduate of the Department of Theater, here to continue our celebration of all things Tom.
My experience with Tom, longer than some, briefer than others. My understanding of his soul and his spirit has been one of a gently brutal, poetic one. And so I'm going to try to sing a poem. This is for Tom. Jacob's ladder furrowed, and I burrow in the earth. But all the aquifers of August must have dried into the dirt when my companion comes unbidden. Tossing currency inside my well like a wisher till the water table rises, flushing out the fissures where I keep my secrets hidden. I cannot staunch the river of my need, so do your worst. I cannot tell the difference between the drowning and the thirst. Through the grappling of the tide, his gaze attaches like a tether. But in those enigmatic eyes, there be all my sins remembered. So I am safe and all unsettled. Everything everything can be explained. There is no mystery in the planet. Jacob's ladder's just a wave in the aurora borealis. No intelligent design, no fortune-telling horoscope. We are no different, you and I. You know nothing I don't know. Now call me by my proper name, or I'll never let you go. Move me, prove me wrong, let's wrestle. 'Cause I cannot start the river of my need. So do your worst. And I cannot tell the difference between the drowning and the thirst. Jacob's ladder furrowed, and I burrow in the earth.
In a career of 39 years, the number of times and positions that Tom has held and incorporated both his leadership and his sort of calming experience is almost insurmountable. But one particular position that Tom revisited a few times for us, I've actually lost track of how many times he served in this position, was as our interim head of the Department of Theater. I honestly think it's somewhere between 2 and 4 times, but the legends in the halls of the Grand Village it was hundreds. Whatever that number really is, I can honestly say that every colleague and student owes a debt of gratitude to the tireless toil of Tom Mitchell. Seriously, 8:15 in the morning, and usually earlier, who was the first in the office already working? It's Tom. Any time of day, weekend, summer vacation, you name it, you could find Tom for help or input or support, with one notable exception, and that is maybe during Ebert Fest. One of his few guilty pleasures was to sneak off to the film festival for about 2 days this spring, and we knew that he was off enjoying something, and we still bothered him, much like calling him. It's Tom. Perhaps nobody knows better the impact of Tom's work than those who have also led or are leading this department, which I hope is a clever segue into introducing Dr. Gabriel Solis, head of the Department of Theater here at the University of Illinois. Dr. Solis.
That was a great segue, although I do feel like we need to spend more time talking because you've sort of stolen my thunder, and I was going to say, I too have a position that Tom has held. That's my opening gambit, but I'll do it anyway. I too that Tom has held, and truly, it's not clear that there are administrative positions that Tom has not held in the Department of Theater. His legacy at the simple task, or perhaps the not so simple task of making this ship continue to stay afloat, has been substantial. I might take a somewhat personal moment to say I came into leadership as the head of the theater department in a moment of rapid transition from a different area. I'm a musicologist by training, a musician by avocation, and a lover of theater, but not, in fact, anyone with any real expertise in the field. And everyone could be forgiven, I think, for having been somewhat nervous about how this was going to go. 3 years later, it's hard for me to say I'm new here in many ways, and I think I have been embraced and welcomed and really able to be successful in this job in no small part due to Tom. Tom has been generous and welcoming and enormously helpful with his time, with his expertise, with his open and willing critical mind. And I will say, we have not never disagreed about how things might go and what might be good decisions to make in regard to both the present and the future of the Department of Theater. But he has always been generous and supportive and happy to both say I disagree and to understand where I'm coming from and to continue working with me to make this thing work in this strange and occasionally bumpy and truly joyful way that it does, in fact, work. To the extent that things are in good shape right now, I think all of us owe a huge debt to Tom. I'll also say, I feel I learned something really significant late in my career, or medium, if you will, in my career. Not exactly about to retire, but medium in my career from Tom. I think a lot of us in the arts, in higher education, have a tendency to really separate practice and scholarship. And this is common. I'm a musicologist. I don't teach performance, though, in my spare time, I have bands. And I've seen these as fairly distinct in practice, and I've been deeply impressed, Tom, by the way that you are a scholar practitioner who brings those two things really very much into dialogue and to the table. So the work with Tennessee Williams' material is deep and thoughtful and meaningful, and it has found expression in publication and in performance and in your really public-facing work. I imagine everybody here knows this, but what the heck, for the Tennessee Williams Festival in St. Louis and for the work in New Orleans and also in Provincetown, that is something that is truly unusual and precious, and a model for us, I think, here at Illinois and everywhere around in the world of higher education. So, well done. I hope that work continues in your time as an emeritus faculty member. And I will only say, as a department head, it's been my pleasure to be able to claim some measure of your success as ours. So thank you, and we will miss you, and I hope we don't miss you too much because you will still be around, I'm truly. Thank you.
JW, thanks, Gabriel. I did that. No, honestly, thank you, Gabriel. This will be a little audience participation, so bear with me because I have to explain something. One of the things that the office knows Tom best for is something that Tom created called Fun Words Friday. I have attempted to block from my memory when this started, as I have only ever been a very reluctant participant. My role as resident grump, which I take very seriously, has precluded my desire to participate in Fun Words Friday, and yet Tom has always found a way to include me. Anyway, Tom would gather all of us near the office about mid-Friday afternoon and would share 3 little-known words that we would all then have to guess the definition of. Why did he do this? I still don't know. Was this really fun? I still don't know. Who helped start this tradition? I know exactly who that was. This is where this came from. Kathy Feely once bought Tom a calendar that offered a little-known word for every day of the year, and then continued to buy him one every year, thereby allowing Tom to continue the tradition of Fun Words Friday, and celebrating Fun Words Friday became something that many people looked forward to. There was even a time when we were attempting to write a theme song for Fun Words Friday. One of the students in the office was working on that. We have not completed that, I'm sorry. That would have been an ideal retirement gift, that you could sing your Fun Words Friday theme song. But it does not go unnoticed even by those of us who are reluctant to participate in Fun Words Friday that today is in fact Friday. So, if you will indulge Tom for just a few moments, I want to present you with our first Fun Words for Fun Words Friday, and here is a word. Before we start, this is how you play. You win if you actually know the real definition of the word. You don't actually win anything, but you win, so whatever that means. But you can also win if you have the most creative interpretation of what you think the word means. So I wanted to test Tom a little bit. I don't know if you had heard, but for 2.5 years, we were sort of pushed into Zoom land because of this pandemic thing. Tom, I thought this would be the end of Fun Words Friday, but sadly, someone taught Tom how to access Zoom scheduling. And we all got invites for Friday afternoon to log on and to Fun Words Friday. When I protested and would claim that my internet wasn't working, I learned this from my students. I then got emails so that in case I missed, I could read along in my own leisure. So I saved some of those. Tom, I want to know if you remember these particular 3 words, and if you do know them, don't help. So you sent these 3 words to us during the pandemic. The first one is a noun, woonerf. Woonerf. W-O-O-N-E-R-F. All the years you've made me live through this. I see. Does anybody else know? Great. At this point, one of the beautiful things about the calendar was there was a terrible sentence using the word in the most sort of incongruous way you can imagine. But first, let me give you the definition, since Tom, you need to be reminded of the definition of woonerfs. A road designed to be shared by cars and pedestrians, often found in European countries, because, unlike Americans, they can be trusted with arrangements like this. In using in a sentence, woonerfs are threatening my right to drive recklessly, and I will not stand it. Maybe you'll do better in number 2. Number 2, it's a little bit what it sounds like. Winterim. Winterim, which is also a noun. All right. Winterim is a break in the school year that takes place chiefly in January, allowing students to catch up with childhood friends and play video games without feeling guilty. In a sentence, I can't wait until I'm on Winterim and I can watch 9 straight hours of Dairy Girls with no consequences. If you're not having fun, then you know what my Fridays are going to be. Actually, this one is perfect for Tom. I don't know if you had some type of crystal ball with which to predict the future, but this word was perfect. And yes, you did send this to us. Perfect one for Tom now is whoopie. W-O-O-P-I-E. Whoopie. A rich, old, retired person who lives The kind of person we all hate yet secretly aspire to become. Origin, a slightly altered acronym for well-off old person, the equivalent of yuppie. In usage, I invested in Apple stock at 18 and used my winnings to retire at 45. I now have 7 houses, 1 on each continent, and run 3 miles every morning. A whoopee! May you be a whoopee, Tom. So yes, this is absolutely something Tom seemed to enjoy. I know David also enjoyed, Kathy also enjoyed, although there were several 12-step programs to help Tom with this, never quite saw them all the way through. I think we may continue it, although it will be much more passive-aggressive, as you can tell. If we might call you to keep that retirement going during your tradition. And speaking of tradition, sometimes traditions are sentimental. So this is another awkward attempt to segue into a long tradition of service that Tom Mitchell embodied on behalf of the Art of Theater and the students wishing to train. You may or may not know that Tom has served over 25 years as a member of the executive committee of the Illinois High School Theater Festival. In fact, with the collaboration of his colleague Sandy Zielinski, he helped shape the very structures that now support this annual statewide celebration of theater arts, in which over 4,500 high school students gather to experience every aspect of the theater production process. Early on, Tom helped secure a grant of over $10,000 to help launch the college auditions that are now a standard practice for students attending the festival, in order for them to be seen by college programs from across the nation. And in 1991, the year I graduated high school, Tom even directed an all-stage show, Mother Hicks, which brought students from across Illinois together for the creation of a fully supported production. Tom did this while often juggling Theater Fest between his additional work of serving with the Kennedy Center for the American College Theater Festival Executive Committee, for which he has also been honored several times as a member of their executive committee as well. Seriously, these are 2 huge festivals that are always scheduled directly opposite each other. At the same time, one is happening somewhere in the Midwest, one is happening either at ISU or here. I have been on the committee with Tom and known him to help host opening ceremonies here, get in the car at the conclusion of that, and drive to Madison, Wisconsin to spend a day working with the American College Theater Festival. Tom believes in the power of theater to change, influence, and shape the human experience. And every action he has taken shows support for that, both for us as his colleagues, both for his students at the college level, and for the potential of students that are interested in this at the high school level and even before the high school level. In honor of the service with Theater Fest, we have the distinct honor of welcoming with us tonight Ryan Lambert, who is the current executive director and longtime member of the Illinois High School Theater Festival Executive Committee, with another fitting tribute to Tom's service and dedication. Ryan?
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of the Illinois Theater Association and the Illinois High School Theater Festival 2022 Committee under the direction of Executive Director Judy Klinger. Each year, possible recipients of this award are nominated by folks throughout the state of Illinois. After all the nominations are collected, the IHSTF committee reviews them and votes on the person they believe is most deserving. With the many comments and statements regarding Tom's history with the festival, it is only fitting that this award be bestowed to him. It is with great honor that I am here to give the Exemplary Contributions Award from the Illinois High School Theater Festival to thank Tom Mitchell for his many years of service. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ryan, and thank you to Theater Fest for helping us all honor all things Tom Mitchell. In the spirit of Gabriel's observation that sometimes we should probably talk to each other a little bit more, there was a name that we were supposed to avoid until this point in the presentation. And you may have noticed in particular that we have avoided a name that is probably pretty central to Tom's very existence. If you've ever had a chance to casually chat with Tom Mitchell, you might have noticed there's one subject he almost always brings up. Tom knows a little bit about another Tom.
Thomas Lanier Williams, perhaps better known to us all as Tennessee Williams. And perhaps the world's understanding of Tennessee Williams would not nearly have been as deeply influenced without the work of our very own Tom Mitchell. I've had the privilege of co-teaching with Tom in several different situations. I can attest to this. There is not a situation in which you can't look at Tom and he won't go, you know, Tennessee Williams. And while I'm making a little light of that, it's mostly out of love, mostly. I've also learned a great deal about Tennessee Williams, so thank you for that. Whether it be through the staging of all of Tennessee Williams' early plays, or adapting Williams' stories for performance, or writing articles, books, reviews on the works of Tennessee Williams, or taking our students to participate in the Tennessee Williams festivals throughout the country. My opinion being the best one being in New Orleans, because Tom is an excellent guide to Bourbon Street. I'm telling you right now. If you ever have the chance, don't pass that up with Tom Mitchell. To know Tom Mitchell is also to meet Tennessee Williams. Truly, it is almost impossible to capture the impact Tom has had on our experience with this iconic American writer. And tonight we wanted to include some of Tennessee here with us to celebrate our friend Tom. Some of our current acting faculty members have elected to read Letters to Irene in order to invite the words of Tennessee Williams to be present with us here in celebration of all things Tom Mitchell.
This is a letter to Irene. It is read by Allison and the rest of us. We are actors. We are not Tennessee Williams, even though this letter is written in Tennessee Williams' voice.
A letter to Irene is a letter, a memoir, a story, maybe a poem to a dear friend, a companion, another lost love.
Dear Irene, it is nearly 2 years since I have seen you. The last time I saw you was at the House of Detention in New Orleans, where we were briefly confined, and I think unjustly, because of the disturbance which occurred at the spring display. You remember what happened. On Royal Street in the Rue Carré. If I remember correctly, you did create a rather terrible scene. We made red snowballs out of raspberry sherbet and pelted a certain gentleman in a Prince Albert coat when he ordered your canvases removed from the walls because of indecency the afternoon that the spring display was open. You lost your Irish temper. Your fine, brutally honest canvases had been removed from the walls because they were considered too strong for academic stomachs. The Black Mariah was called. We were forcibly ejected from the salon and hauled down to night court. You got out on bail. I did not.
It was the following evening that I saw you for the last time, Irene. Your face was very white, and still you wore a black plain dress with some cheap glass beads. The collar of this dress was crumpled and soiled and fit you very badly. Your stockings were crooked, you had runs in them. Your nose, your mouth, your hands looked uncommonly large. You were a big, peasant-looking girl. But you brought me cigarettes, mandarins, and a pad of typewriter paper on which I wrote the first scene of my 5th long play. A person would think, to look at you, that you were a bad-tempered serving wench. Certainly not the fine and sensitive artist which you were. I asked you what you were going to do now that your New Orleans period seemed to be pretty thoroughly washed up. You said you didn't know, but you smiled, and I thought that you weren't very bothered about it. When I was released a few days later, however, your little crib-like studio on Bourbon Street was vacant, and there was nothing to indicate that you had ever been there, except that charcoal inscription over the single burner. Remember? This is the only one true aristocracy. The aristocracy of passionate souls.
I can see you dimly beneath a slanting roof. Daylight pours through a ceiling window behind you. You are wearing that outrageously dirty gray trench coat because it is winter and the room is inadequately heated. There is a single burner, and on it is a great black kettle which follows you everywhere. In this kettle is one of your anonymous mixtures of vegetable and meat scraps accumulated during the last 5 days, always simmering, never entirely depleted, beginning finally to taste a little rancid, and so thrown away. You've adopted another alley cat who looks better fed than you do. Around you are all the pictures you had of the Vogue Tower. They are like great open windows upon this fierce, wildcat-like beauty of life. They are crude and bad and wonderful. Among them are some new ones which I had never seen. They are clearer and stronger than the old. Your art is like a trumpet, which increases in volume until it begins at last to echo against the world's 4 obdurate walls. But nobody buys them, Irene. They were too honest for decoration, and you are still unknown. None of the quarter rats knew where you had gone, Irene, or what had become of you. I asked everyone. They all had different ideas. Some of them thought you had gone to New York. Some said it was to Mexico. Some even suggested that you had been removed to a psychiatric ward or jumped in the river. I know that neither of those last two were correct.
You were made for survival, Irene, just as surely as some artists are made for destruction. I'm not really worried about you, but I miss you terribly sometimes. You had a bigness and a strength about you which I know is unconquerable, and I know that you are still living somewhere and still painting those coarse, brutal canvases which had the impact of naked life in them. Irene, it is raining tonight. Maybe that is why I started thinking about you. Rain always reminds me of evenings in your little crib-like room on Bourbon Street. I think particularly of one during Mardi Gras. You had made our costumes out of your India print. The sewing job was a bad one, Irene, and my exotic diaper came loose in front of the Maison Blanche. I improvised another of the Times-Picayune. Your brassiere was equally unstable. That evening, we escaped arrest, however, and at about 5 in the morning, we returned to your studio.
The slow, quiet New Orleans rain was falling, Irene, and it was beginning to be daylight. White fog was rolling up from the waterfront sheds over the old French market and the cabildo around the great iron horseman Andrew Jackson. Neither of us was working at the time. We had $1 between us. We were high as kites. And it was beginning to be daylight, and the drunks were lying about the streets like corpses after a total bombardment. You sat on the edge of the bed and you shook with laughter. I'm alive. You kept saying,
I'm alive.
I'm alive.
I'm alive!
in this new place where you live now, you have a few friends. There among them is a poet who works as a waiter, a garage mechanic, a musician who lives by prostitution. At night, they come to your place, relax on the sagging mattress, and talk about life and art and the war which they don't understand. Their lives focus on you, Irene, because you express most clearly what they all have in common: a deep, passionate quality of life, a longing, a sensitivity, a love. Some of them have draft numbers, Irene. One by one, they will drift into the growing maelstrom and be torn away, lost. And yet, Irene, they will finally outlive the guns. For this quality in them which brought them to you is stronger than metal is, and it will survive. And finally, as light rises or as sun falls, this brightness, this truth will prevail. And the brave new world sometime coming will be made of it. This awkwardly, stupidly expressed humor. For me, things have altered considerably since then. Perhaps will alter still more, but I don't think I shall ever feel more joy, more exultation than I felt with you that morning when you sat on the edge of the bed and shrieked, "I am alive!" So wildly that even the drunks in the street began to grunt with dismay.
Irene, I hope that you are still alive as you were then. Somehow I feel sure that you are.
At 12 noon tomorrow, I board a train for Boston, where on the following evening, which is Monday, the 30th day of December, I will crawl out of my old familiar skin and shiver nakedly in one that is strangely new. On that evening, which is practically the end of an old year and practically the beginning of a new, my 5th long play, Battle of Angels, will have what is impressively known as its world premiere.
At that time, I will graduate from the class of unknown and untried American writers into the class of the known and the tried. Wherever you are, Irene, I hope you knew about this. I know if you knew about this, you would starve yourself for a week, if necessary, to send me a telegram of good wishes.
Irene, you and I belonged to the great class of unknown, untried artists, whose number is legion from the Vieux Carré of New Orleans, to Telegraph Hill in Frisco, to Greenwich Village in New York. We were like the sands of the desert. Nobody knew us but our immediate associates. We read each other's poems and plays, admired each other's pictures. We were mute, inglorious Miltons and invisible Rembrandts. We did. How did we live, Irene? Do you know how? God, it's hard to imagine. What we created had no commodity value. Nobody printed our poems, or produced our plays, or bought our canvases. It was a miraculous period when most of us were doing creative projects for the WPA. It was a fool's paradise, of brief duration.
Irene, the whole world has changed since then. A great war has started. There's terrific confusion and darkness over the Earth's whole surface.
Why, Irene? Why? Why? Sometimes I think it is because so many like you are left unknown and untried.
Irene, I believed in your work, and you believed in mine. We thought of ourselves as the foxes, and of the world as the hounds. And in a way, Irene, I believe we were right.
But in a way, we were wrong. The world was not against us, Irene.
The world was merely indifferent, unaware.
And besides, Irene,
You were young.
This from a person who claims to dislike sentimentality. In case Tennessee Williams somehow failed to put us all in a sentimental mindset, we have another way of celebrating all things Tom. During most of our years of graduation ceremonies, that day happens to fall on or very close to Mother's Day. And as such, the seniors often offer a video tribute to their mothers of all sorts. And Tom has famously leaned over and said to me many, many times, "Let us now celebrate Mother's Day by watching pictures of us." He likes to point out that the mothers rarely show up. So, Tom, let us now celebrate Tom by some pictures of Tom.
We're nearing the end of our cycle. But before we get there, I did want to take a second to make sure that everyone knows that here near the entrance is a sort of celebration book for anybody that would like to sign and leave some sentiment for Tom. And I encourage you to do so after the conclusion of our events here today. One of the things that happened when the announcement of Tom's retirement was first made to us, other than sort of a couple of days of feeling stunned and going, oh, I can't imagine this place, Tom, without you. We then, with his permission, were able to break that news over social media. And you were reading some of the comments that we were able to take, and that was just a small selection. You can imagine we're talking about 39 and a half years. So what was fascinating to me was the outpouring from across generations of students that we find on our alumni page, and it was incredibly moving to see the influence Tom has had on so many of us over those years. But a sort of late-breaking announcement has happened, and in perfect coordination between Dr. Solis and myself. We haven't had too much of a chance to talk about this because it is such late-breaking information, but I want to welcome Gabriel back to tell us a little update of something very exciting in honor of Tom.
Yes, thank you. Sure. That's fine. You'll applaud for this thing, if not for me. Right. This last slideshow was a really apt demonstration of a thing that I think we maybe haven't emphasized nearly enough in the program so far this evening, which is to say the profound legacy that Tom has essentially constructed in his impact on students. Students for now, we'll just call it 40 years, have had the opportunity to learn from him, to be changed and transformed by him, and to take those lessons out into the world. And so it is with enormous pleasure that I have the opportunity now to announce that through the considerable generosity of a number of Tom's former students, our alumni, we will be inaugurating a student scholarship in Tom's name, the Tom Mitchell. Like I said, you really will applaud. This award will support excellent students in theater selected from across our undergraduate student body who are doing good work and deserve recognition. And I'm pleased to say that we will be able to award this annually thanks to, as I said, the generosity of some alumni. The award will also be something that you may contribute to extend its capacity to support students both in number and over time. So we hope to see more generosity in that area, but we're really, really pleased to be able to announce its inauguration. The first Tom Mitchell Scholar will be announced among the students next year. So congratulations and thank you.
Part of the reason we've made this programming so long is in order to impact as many students as possible. Tom, we've been moving the things out of your office and selling them. Several signed copies of Tennessee Williams' early stories. Of course I kid. There's no easy way to celebrate 39 and a half years. And before I completely break down into tears celebrating my friend and mentor Tom, I thought perhaps the easiest way to encourage Tom to embrace sentimentality is to put him on the spot.
Trust me, later I'll be happy to tell you lots of stories that are not always appropriate for a large gathering of things that I experienced, often in this very room as part of the drama rehearsal room and rehearsals for shows. The very first show I ever did here, actually, Tom cast me as a woman. And I managed to wrestle a title from then Professor Joanna McClay, who had for years won an award. This was a different time, by the way, so please don't judge us with our sort of celebration of body types. But there was a competition in Cranard for the best legs of Cranard. And Joanna McClay was known for her fabulous hosiery, so she won this every year for probably 20 years, until I was cast as a woman. That was the last time I spoke to Professor McClay. When it was announced that Tom had somehow managed to get me entered into the contest, then I found myself with the title. And as you can see, history has not been kind to me. I should say age has not been kind to me. I still like to think there's some nice stories there. Those types of stories will live on forever in our memory of Tom here. And Tom's not disappearing. Tom will still be, I'm certain I'll still be calling Tom and going, what did you do when this happened? And in the spirit of that, I would like to now welcome Tom Mitchell up to the podium. He doesn't know we're asking him to do this. I have no idea if he's prepared any remarks, and frankly, I didn't prepare. I would just like to clap for Tom in front of us.
Thanks. Clearly 39 years is too long for a retrospective of anything, so forgive me my many years. I'm uncomfortable talking about myself. But I'm very comfortable, and it feels great to see all of you, and to have nearly 40 years of colleagues here in all sorts of different ways, as students, as peers, as leaders. It has meant a lot, and I feel very, very fortunate that this department, this university, has made it possible for me to just do a ton of things, to work with excellent students, to produce beautiful productions on the stages of this center, to take students on trips to travel with them to China and to Provincetown and to New Orleans and St. Louis and here and there. And to travel myself as part of the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival all around the country to see productions by other university and college students all over the place. To be part of the Illinois Theater, High School Theater Festival and all of what that meant. To see so many high school kids in this building every other year, sweating and smelling up the place, but really committing themselves for those 2.5 days to a life in the theater and sharing their excitement about that. What a great thing. So I cannot help but be thankful. See, I don't like the sentiment. My family's here, and I sort of love having babies running around. I remember one of the first things I did when I came here, I was maybe still I came here as a graduate student, as a doctoral student, and then worked with Bernard Hobgood on the directing colloquiums here, where we hosted leading directors from all over the world to show a gathered group how it's done, how these different directors work. And in that colloquium, Alex, my oldest son, he's like 2 years old, so I wasn't a grad student yet. But he toddled in and was shaking hands with Maurizio Scaparo from the Piccolo Theater in Italy. And my kids were at home in this room During rehearsals, they ran through the halls of the Cranach Center. And what a great, it seemed like a kind of a great. Anyway, my oldest son Alex and our middle son Isaac and his wife Mary and our young son Gabe is here. And our grandson Sawyer is running around these halls now too. And I'm so happy about that. And my wife Joy, who has made all of this possible over many years, including she reminds me, at least anyway, I think that it was directing the Kentucky Cycle, which if you don't know, it's like an 8-hour play. It takes 2 nights to produce. I was in the middle of rehearsal at the Kentucky Cycle when Isaac was born. And I was there for that, but the next night I had to go back to rehearsal. So you all have much better things to do than to hang out here. But I appreciate it so much. It is wonderful to see your faces and to touch base with many of you that I haven't seen for years. It's actually great to see some of those production photos of shows that I had not been able to think about for a long time. So it's just great. I have one little thing from Tennessee Williams. My whole thing with Tennessee Williams has always been that I recognized is the connection of that writer with our students and the life of making theater in this place with groups and groups of dedicated young people who had something to say. And Tennessee Williams was once a young person like that who had something to say and had to start out with a group of his friends, and they got together and they put on a show, and that's how making theater starts. And I tell my classes all the time that they may become the next Tennessee Williams, or even better, the next whatever, whoever they are. And I believe that deeply. In amongst the many papers by Tennessee Williams that I found in all these archives, I think this was at Harvard. He wrote a thing after opening Streetcar Named Desire that talks about the experience of collaboration. And it speaks to me, and I suspect many of you will recognize what he says. So forgive me for indulging in this Tennessee Williams thing. He says, when a group of people work passionately together to give body and spirit to the fractured, incomplete vision of a playwright, because they are stirred by the possibility of taking the cloudy stuff and forcing it through their united talents to become an exciting, vitally meaningful illumination of life, then something deeper than friendship must exist to make this happen among them, as if they were a group of joined bodies with one heart. I think, man, I know that sentiment. And I am so grateful to have been and to continue to be part of that one body that shares one heart. So thank you. Thanks, JW and Kathy and Gabriel, all of you, thank you very much. And I look forward to the next, 39 years or so.
The time all gone to? Haven't done half the things we want to. this day was just a token. Too many words are still unspoken. Oh well, we'll catch up some other time. Just when the fun is starting, comes the time for parting. Well, let's be glad for what we had and what's to come. There's so much more embracing still to be done, but time is racing. Oh well, we'll catch up some other time. Anyone can whistle, that's what they say. Easy. Anyone can whistle any old day. Easy. It's all so simple. Relax, let go, let fly. So someone tell me, why can't I can dance a tango, I can read Greek easy. I can slay a dragon any old week easy. What's hard is simple, what's natural